evening, viewers, and a happy new year. In this new year episode, we are here with a new look media scan, the show which brings your weekend dose of headlines, controversies, and perspectives. Now that we have stepped into 2021, let's take a quick look at the last week of 2020. So, what made news? The sixth round of dialogue between Government of India and protesting farmers, which came after a 20-day stalemate, proved to be the proverbial icebreaker. Media was abuzz with photos of senior ministers breaking bread with farm union representatives. After about 7 hours, there was visible agreement on 2 of the farmers' demands, with possibility of creative negotiations on other contentious issues. We will check this out further in a few moments. With experts holding marathon meetings to grant the emergency authorization, SOPs being worked out at airports, dry runs all over the country, India is geared up for the rollout of the COVID vaccine. Meanwhile, tracing and testing for the new strain of the virus is also in full swing after many persons coming from UK tested positive in different cities. Thankfully, experts have assured that the vaccine will be effective on the new strain as well. With BJP candidates leading in 5,200 odd seats out of the total more than 5,700 Gram Panchayats, the party has swept the Karnataka rural elections this week. Till last reports, the Congress was leading in 3,000 odd panchayats, while the JDS bagged 1,500. With the state cabinet passing the Madhya Pradesh Dharma Swatantra Vidhayak 2020, MP has become the second state to enact a law on what is called love jihad. The law envisages imprisonment and heavy fines against forced and fraudulent religious conversion, including marriage only for conversion purpose. From jubilation to heartbreak, Rajinikanth fans had a tough week as the matinee superstar backed out from his promise of launching a political party owing to prevailing health conditions. In a 3-page letter addressed to his fans, Rajini said he felt his recent ill health was a signal from God not to take the plunge. So, after that quick look at the headlines during the week, it's time to understand some of the issues which dominated media space through the week. And for that, I have here with me a special panel of guests who will share their perspective with us. So, without wasting any more time, let me introduce my guests to you for the evening. I have with me Mr. Abhinav Prakash, an academic, a well-known political commentator, and a common face on social media. Welcome, Abhinav Prakash. This is your first appearance on Media Scan, and I hope we will continue this association for the coming weekends. And a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Smitaji. Thank you for having me here.
I also have with me Kartikeya Tanna. You have heard him on Media Scan before. Another very popular, well-known social media personality, commentator and analyst. Welcome, Kartikeya Tanna.
Thank you, Smitaji. Happy New Year to
Happy
all
New
of
Year.
you.
Viewers, nobody was too hopeful when the farmers returned to the dialogue table earlier this week after a gap of 20 days. But as senior ministers of the government shared a langar meal with farmers, the ice was finally broken. As the ministers have briefed, there was agreement on 2 of the contentious issues, that is penalty on the farmers for stubble burning and the electricity amendment bill. Both of these issues are those which the government had already agreed to soften. Though the farmers are sticking to the demand of repealing the 3 agri reform bills, chances of reaching an understanding have now become stronger. Meanwhile, commuters continue to face severe hardships at border points while coming and going to and from Delhi owing to the protest. So, will good sense finally prevail upon the forces which are holding up an agreement We will discuss all that, but before that, let us just listen to what the Agriculture Minister Narendra Singh Tomar had to tell after the dialogue.
जो 4 विषय चर्चा के लिए रखे थे, उनमें 2 विषयों पर आपसी रजामंदी सरकार और यूनियन के बीच में हो गई है। पहला जो एनवायरनमेंट से संबंधित ऑर्डिनेंस है, उसमें फराली और किसान सम्मिलित हैं। उनकी शंका थी कि किसान को इसमें नहीं होना चाहिए। सरकार ने कहा है कि हम आपकी चिंता से वाकिफ़ हैं और इस मामले में दोनों पक्षों में रजामंदी हो गई है। दूसरा, इलेक्ट्रिसिटी एक्ट, किसानों की सिंचाई के लिए जो विद्युत की सब्सिडी दी जाती है, वो राज्य जिस प्रकार से पहले से देते रहे हैं वैसी ही चलनी चाहिए, ऐसी यूनियंस की मांग थी। उस मांग पर भी यूनियन और सरकार के बीच में रजामंदी हो गई है।
So that was the Agriculture Minister telling you about what were the agreements reached between the dialogue. We know that another round of talks is scheduled for Monday on the 4th of January. I want to come to Abhinav Prakash on this first. Mr. Prakash, we know that the farmers have not softened or even budged from their stand when the repeal of the 3 agri laws comes into question. However, the talks this week are still being seen as a great leap forward, or at least promising to have some forward movement. How do you look at the entire scenario now?
Well, thank you, Smita ji. See, what we're having in these talks is that the government has agreed to the points which the government had already said in the beginning of this month, that they're going to make concessions on certain points, which included the electricity bill and also the stable burning. But the problem which we are facing here is that the farmers' demands are unrealistic. So these protests are happening not because something wrong has happened in the law, because remember, the farmers in the discussion were not able to point out what exactly is the problem and in which clause do they have a problem.
Right.
So the protests are happening mainly because of apprehensions. They are happening mainly because of the fear of the future rather than what has actually happened. So I think it's a more of a larger political economy thing which we are seeing, that the farmer unions of certain states of Punjab and Haryana, which benefited from the Green Revolution in the past and whose entire prosperity depends on the state subsidized access to the electricity, water, cheap credit, and also assured prices for their produce, they are now feeling threatened in the sense that they have this apprehension that if these systems are withdrawn, they might face a problem in the future.
I'll come back to you on that. But let me bring in Kartikeya Tanna here, particularly on the issue of the assured prices, which you said, and procurement. Kartikeya Tanna, we have gone through this before in an earlier episode. My question to you is, we know that there are forces which are holding up an agreement on the issue. However, like Abhinav Prakash pointed out, when it comes to a clause-by-clause discussion on the acts, the farmers were found wanting. Now, my question to you is, while some agreement has been reached on the stubble burning issue and electricity, do you think the main contentious issue of MSP will now see some understanding between the two parties, or will the forces holding up the talks still prevail?
Well, as Abhinav said, very eloquently, we don't know exactly what the demands of the farmers are in regard to the law. Because what are their problems? One of the problems that came across is that, the land will be taken away if the farmer is unable to pay money to buyers.
Yes.
But there's a clear clause in the Farm Agreement on Price Assurance and Farm Services Act, which actually says that the land is a complete no-go area, even in the case of default. In fact, even if the farmer wants to enter into an agreement with a buyer that in the event of default, the land shall be taken away, that agreement will not be valid under the same law. So I'm not sure what the exact issue is. In regard to MSP, Yes, they want a legal guarantee of an MSP, but if you think about it, before these farm laws were introduced, there was no legal guarantee of MSP at all. So I'm not sure why the farmers are demanding now for the MSP to be put in the law as a legal guarantee when it wasn't even existing in the first.
I think the
MSP
farmer union's argument is that the MSP may not have been legally guaranteed in the law earlier, but now that a new situation has arisen, they have fears about the MSP continuing. Whatever that may be, let me come back to Abhinav Prakash. You want to add something to that, Kartikeya Tanna?
Yes, I mean, I just want to say that MSP was never a part of any law in independent India's history. MSP was a procedure, a government notification brought in year to year, in fact twice a year, based on the advent of the season, and it was based on what amount of procurement would the government need to do so that the farmers are not left without any buyer for their produce. So now to put it in a law, it defeats the whole purpose anyways, because the whole purpose of this law is it doesn't it doesn't deprive anyone of anything in that sense. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't make anything less work. All it does is it adds another option to the farmers to sell in the open market or to private buyers who would want to buy directly from the farmers. That's it. It doesn't render anyone else any worse off than what the situation was, before the farm laws were passed.
Okay, so let me get a comment from Abhinav here before we move on to the larger question of these three laws. Abhinav Prakash, we know that there are other issues and other fears of the farmers and their representatives. But on this moot question of MSP, government has been repeatedly saying that they are ready to give assurance that MSP will continue. And in fact, government has been raising MSP through the last 2-3 years continuously. Why do you think the farmers are not ready to take this assurance from the government for its word?
Well, first of all, we have to understand that what these demands exactly are. The agriculture is the private sector and farmers are the private producers. So what we're having is that a set of private producers is forcing the government to make the law to force everyone else to buy crops for them at a desired price. Now that is unjustifiable ethically. That is procure. No, they also want to force the private buyers to buy it at the MSP. Now that is unethical, that is uneconomical, and that is not something which can be justified at all. You can't have government guaranteeing one set of private producers assured prices. Why not the other private producers then? But the problem with the MSP is that it's an incentive policy. It can't be made into a law. So you have been giving incentives to the crops as per as the requirement. Now what that MSP has done in Punjab specifically, that by giving perverse incentive, because you have higher MSP on the paddy crop, so the Punjab, which is an arid region, which is a water scarce region, is now doing cultivation of the paddy. Now because of that, the water tables in Punjab have declined. In Punjab has declined. You have massive expansion of the paddy farming, and they're using excessive chemical fertilizers to keep on producing more paddy. And this is happening because you have MSP, you have an above market price. And that is causing the ecological crisis. There is
Are you trying to say that the entire concept of an MSP may have been relevant at some point of time, but it is now becoming a problem, an issue which needs to be addressed in a different way, not assuring MSP actually, but the other way?
Exactly. So what we need to do is we need to have a long-term gliding path to move away from the MSP towards direct income transfer to the farmers. It's better to give them direct income support, maybe increase the PM Kisan from 6,000 to 16,000, whatever is feasible, but do not distort the prices in the economy. Because the moment you distort the prices, you are distorting resource allocation in the economy. It will have second order, third order effect on the economy, and those are quite destructive. Because of MSP and the perverse incentive it is giving to the farmers, entire Punjab is now the cancer belt of India, because they're producing crops which is not suited to Punjab, and they're using excessive chemical fertilizers, excessive inorganic materials.
That is why the stress on diversification, which agriculture economists have been stressing for a long time, but we have not really been able to put it into practice. I have just time for one remark from Kartikeya Tanna before I would like to move on to the next subject on our table. Kartikeya Tanna, The issue of diversification we have already been through in earlier episodes. But you see, this is what comes out when we speak to an agriculture economist or people who know the subject. The way this subject has been dealt with by the media, and because this is Media Scan, I have to ask you this question. Right. The way this subject of MSP, or actually the entire gamut of agriculture reforms, has been dealt by the media, do you think the media is also guilty of taking the country on a different trajectory which doesn't suit our own situation, or even the farmers?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, because the media is also responsible for, in a sense, spreading the myths about these reforms. What these laws will do. They will snatch away the lands of, poor farmers.
And mandis will be finished.
They're also romanticizing the protest. That they're struggling day in and day out in order to do this. So so instead of shedding light, instead of enlightening the nation on the real effect of these reforms and also the key issues that are actually a matter of dispute, if at all there are any.
Yes.
Instead of doing that, instead of shedding light on that, it is adding fuel to the fire. But that is the nature of the media. So we can't really do anything about it. We know the media has been like this since a while. Even in CAA last year, they did the same thing. Therefore programs like yours, which shed at least some light on the real issues and the real aspects are critically important.
Thank you for that. Abhinav Prakash,
in regard to the MSP,
just a quick remark on the media's treatment of this entire protest before we move on to the next subject.
Well, I don't think that, I think you're talking about the private media channels in this country. So I don't think they are really interested in evaluating the issue or discussing the issues in depth. Okay. It's more of a TRP race. So what sells, they're selling that. So the emotions sell. So they are going to these camps and romanticizing this protest, showing the misery of it. So all those things are happening, but the real issues have lost sight. The real issue here is the agrarian crisis in Punjab. The real issue here is that the Punjab is now worse off than the Bihar in terms of economic growth rate for years after year. And the Punjab in the next 20-30 years might be facing a drought-like situation because water tables are falling so low because of inefficient, unsustainable agricultural practices which are going on because of free electricity, MSP, and basically distortion of the incentive pattern. So those are the long-term issues which are not being solved.
What I gather from Abhinav Prakash comments and earlier Mr. Tanna also, it's all right to romanticize the protests and focus on the struggles of the people, which of course the media must. But we cannot lose sight of the actual subject at hand. And like we have said it before, I want to repeat it again, agriculture reforms, looking at agriculture from an entirely new perspective has already been long overdue. Viewers, on that note, I want to move on to the next subject of discussion this evening. Like every year, the last week of 2020 was also full of year-ender capsules on television, in the digital media, and many such columns in newspapers. Most of the editorials and opinion columns reflected on the crisis of the past year and our efforts to beat them. Expectedly, a lot was directed at the government's treatment of the challenges. On the other side, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's call for Atmanirbhar Bharat became the overarching mantra for the country and will continue to be so in 2021. Let's ask our experts what they feel on that. Let me come to Kartikeya Tanna first. Mr. Tanna, we have seen pretty somber writing and commentary on the past year in our media this entire week or 10 days. And most of them have felt, they have had a very lamenting kind of a frame of mind on the situation of democracy in the country and the Modi government's treatment of the crisis related to COVID, whether it was the health side of it or the resultant economic situation. How would you rate the Modi government's treatment of the entire crisis here? And do you think we have come out more satisfied than not satisfied?
Well, I think personally speaking, it is the best that a government could have done given the situation. I mean, we are again a nation of 1.3 billion people. To have a crisis come at us in such an unexpected way and to deal with it is a mammoth task in itself. But if you think about it, the way ration has reached, almost 800, 700 million odd poor people in the remotest corners of the country.
Yes.
I mean, to do that itself is an achievement that has probably never happened in the world in this magnitude. Yes, economy in terms of industry and business has undoubtedly suffered, but that is a global phenomenon that is bound to happen if you have lockdowns. That is bound to happen if you have to shut down businesses. Yes, unemployment is definitely a challenge, which is why the Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign comes into the fore, which is why it's very important. This is not to say that, India should again be a restrictive economy of any kind. This is to say that we have to be self-resilient, and we have to, at least as far as possible, buy local and hire local in order to give a fillip to our economy. So, in that sense, skill development and the impetus that the Modi government has put on skill development in specific is something that is praiseworthy. And we will see in 2021 and 2022 a fast-paced recovery from what has been undoubtedly a very unfortunate year in terms of what has happened.
Abhinav Prakash, there's a very relevant question here. Yes, the economy may not be bouncing back, but we are coming back on track. And there are green shoots visible in most of the sectors now. But on the Atmanirbhar, as Kartikeya Tanna just pointed out, there is this ongoing debate about being protectionist and insecure and going back to the economic mindset of the 70s, compared or contrasted with the idea that Atmanirbhar Bharat at present is the best way to deal with the situation and in the larger picture. You being aware of the subject, how would you view the entire concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat? Are we being scared and protectionist? Are we being bold and correct?
First of all, the economy is recovering very fast, Smita ji. This month's GST data shows that it is the highest GST collection ever since the GST was implemented in India. So we are having a fast-paced recovery. Now coming to Atmanirbhar Bharat, see, this Atmanirbhar Bharat is not that a socialist autarkic model which Prime Minister Modi is talking about. He's basically talking about making India the part of the global value chain. So now you have the production processes which are dispersed all across the world. So no one country can produce a good entirely on its own. So if you're making a car, different parts are made in different countries and they are just aggregated in some parts. So we have a best example of the mobile phone manufacturing in India. So we are basically doing assembly of the mobile phones. When Prime Minister Modi is talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, he's basically simply advocating the tried and tested formula which countries like China, which countries like Vietnam, which countries like Thailand have adopted, is to make India a manufacturing hub by linking it to the global value chains. It's
and
not
globally
that
competitive too.
Competitive too.
In
so
terms
you have
of
to
quality, yes.
Leveraging your advantage at the cheap cost country. You have to give massive employment to the people. So make India a manufacturing hub. It's not like what we had in the 70s. So we do not have protectionism. We have strategic, policy making to go into strategic areas which can grow faster and which India have comparative advantage at the moment. So certainly not like that anti-globalization worldview which we had in the 60s and the 70s.
So let me come back to Kartikeya Tanna on another aspect of the whole politics of it. Kartikeya Tanna, I surely cannot wind up this interesting discussion without a word on the opposition, if you look at the political side of it. A lot has been written in the last 1 week about the opposition coming together and democracy being completely threatened in the country in the current regime. We also read a few articles today and the last 2-3 days. How would you rate the attitude, the entire politics of India's opposition vis-a-vis the COVID challenge and now the current farmers' crisis? Do you think they are totally focused on politics, or have they been able to contribute helpfully in terms of both the challenges?
Smita ji, I mean, I don't even need to say it honestly. There's one word to sum up the opposition's attitude on this. It's hypocrisy. Because almost everything that they were advocating at one point of time, which is when COVID started initially, they said lockdown, lockdown. When the lockdown happened, they said, why are you locking down? Same with the farmers' reforms. All the parties have had this in their manifestos. They have made several speeches in parliament Even Arvind Kejriwal, who's at the forefront of helping the farmers right now by providing them free Wi-Fi and everything. Even his party had this in their manifesto in Punjab. So now they are opposing it because, well, Mr. Modi might be getting credit for it. So honestly, there is very much left to be desired from the opposition, because the problem is, this is not to say that everything that the Modi government has done has been, ranked, can be given 10 on 10 marks. But the improvement can only happen if there's a constructive opposition which actually advocates valuable suggestions on a policy issue, on issue to issue, rather than flip their positions just because now it's politically convenient for them, and they can rouse flames and provoke people. And unfortunately, especially in the farmers issue, that's what they're doing. They're provoking them. And the farmers also don't remember that these are the same politicians who had asked for exactly the same things loudly and vociferously in the last almost decade.
Okay,
so,
Abhinav Prakash, on the same question, sir, I can also, Kartikeya Tanna has mentioned a few instances. I would like to add the attitude of the Punjab government on this. They were quite provocative in the initial stages of the movement, which has now resulted in a kind of a complete law and order breakdown in the state. Be that as it may, my question to you, Abhinav Prakash, is to wind up this discussion, like Kartikeya Tanna used the term hypocrisy to define the opposition's behavior through the year. Would you also be so harsh to them? Or what would be your comment on the opposition's attitude in the past 12 months?
Well, I would say that the opposition in this country is facing a crisis of ideology, is facing a crisis of understanding what is changing in the country. So the opposition today is basically abandoning the centrist position and moving towards the far left, whereas the ruling party is now occupying more and more the centrist stage or the centrist stance in the country. Now, once you do that, once you move towards far left or extreme of any ideological extreme, you get blinded by your own worldview. So this is what is happening with the opposition. They are misreading the changes in the country. They are misreading that the country is urbanizing very fast. They're misreading that the new generation do not believe in this Adani Ambani rhetoric, like old anti-Tata Birla kind of political sloganeering no longer works in this country, because people really want more jobs. They want India to become a more modern country. They want bullet trains, whereas the opposition is seen as mocking bullet trains. So they're completely misreading the demographic shift, the cultural shift in the country, and they're positioning themselves, painting themselves in a corner. So I don't think that this cluelessness is going to go anywhere in the next year as well, unless until something drastic changes in the opposition.
So if I gather it right, what Abhinav Prakash is stressing is that the role of the opposition is not exactly about commenting on the government all the time. They also must read the mood of the country, the aspirational India's feelings and outlook, if they want to stay relevant, and give them the right direction in politics. With that, viewers, I'm afraid I've completely overshot my timing today. So, before I wind up for the evening, I must thank profusely Kartikeya Tanna and Abhinav Prakash, both articulate and very up-to-date gentlemen. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And with that, I must say good night for this evening.
Thank you.